and we want both create. Ow. Hey everyone, so welcome back. Today I want to finish out the editor, and if we have time, we'll do the comments as well. So first, let's make the editor page. And let's open that up. And as usual, we'll add the normal React boilerplate. And remember that we have to extend route component props from each router. And I know ahead of time that we're going to have some extra functionality, so we're going to wrap this in brackets and do a return. And while I'm here, I'm also going to add the markup for the editor that's given to us by Conduit. So it'll be wrapped in editor page, container page, row, and just the columns that's given to us by Bootstrap. And inside of these brackets is where we're going to add the form. Now, a lot of the form components that we're going to grab from Formic, so I'm going to add this import statement at the top. All right, we'll come back to the editor, but right now let's actually add it to our routes. So I'm going to put it right here above article and below settings. Now we're going to have one for just the editor, and this is going to be the new path. So when we ever recreate a new article, because of the way Reach Router works, we're going to have to make another editor page here. This one taking in the param of slug. And this is whenever we want to edit or update an existing article. Now in editor, let's make sure that we have access to that route param called slug. And right now I just want to test if this works for both the existing article and for the non-existing one. So we're going to console slug, and if it's a new article, we're going to expect this to be undefined. And going into the browser. So this is the new article, and it's giving us undefined, which is what we were expecting. And if we provide a slug of just anything like a simple string of AOEU, we're going to expect that to come back, which is good. Now let's construct the form. On second thought, I'm going to remove this import, and instead I'm going to make a new component for the editor form called editor form, and that's going to go into components. And this is where we're going to actually use the Formic components. But before we do that, let's actually just add it in here. So the editor page now has access to the form. So first we're going to get the form component, and we're going to replace this outer HTML form with the Formic form. Then we'll add the HTML field set tags on the outside, as well as for each field that we're going to create. The inner ones are going to have the class name of form group, and inside of that we'll get the field component from Formic. The first field is going to be for the article title, the body. Alright, this one's the body, and this one was the description. For the body field, this is going to be a type of text area, which needs the attribute rows of 8. I think 8 should be a number instead of a string, so I'm going to do that instead. And then finally, a field for the tag list. And lastly, we need to add the button for the submission. And if you save, it'll go look like that. Now after all of this, it's going to fail and give us a lot of errors. And that's because we need to wrap this with the Formic component itself. And I'm actually going to put it into here on the level higher up, because based on the slug, we're going to change the initial values and the handle submit function. For now, if we just add a default initial values and on submit, this is basically a no op function, doesn't do anything. We're getting object here because we forgot to add the names to our editor form. So we could go ahead and do that. This is title, description, body, tag list, and save. And now we'll get the placeholders because all of these values have nothing in it so far. Now to update the Formic on submit and initial values, we're actually going to have to go back into our state in articles, and we need to create the actions that we need from Overmind. Alright, so I'm going to make a new action here. Our create article action is going to take a value of the article DTO, and we'll add the normal wrapping of the pattern that we've been using. And we're going to call create article from our effects, passing in the value wrapped in the article object. Then we're going to add that article in to the database with the index of that slug, which the slug comes back from the database or from the API. So we'll have to access it by doing .slug here. Next, we're going to make an update article action. We're going to provide a type where value is going to be the DTO, and then we also need a slug. And we'll destructure it like so we get value and slug. If I save, it'll be on a new line like that. And instead of create article, we're going to call update article, which takes in slug as the first argument, and then there's not going to be any changes to the second argument. And lastly, the only change I want to make is, instead of doing article.slug here, I'm just going to do a replace and use the slug provided in the update article. And let's add that to our actions export. And while we're here, I want to also add the delete method. And delete article is going to be a little different. We'll do the try catch, but we don't need to get the value back. Instead, we're just going to call delete on articles.db at that particular slug. And I'm going to add that to the export as well. I think that's all we need to do in the state. So let's go back to our editor. Let's call our hook. And what I want from the hook is going to be the actions from articles. And we want both create article and update article. And with those two, we're going to create a handle submit function that calls the appropriate action conditionally. And we're also sending in the correct values based on which action that we want to call. And with that, we can change on submit to take in handle submit. We're going to have to change tag list to an array here, which is going to present some other problems, but we'll get to that eventually. Next, we're going to want some of the data from our state. In particular, I want db and loading. Let's add a comma here. And I'm just going to take this and paste that here, and then just send it into formic, like so. And then the last thing we want to do is make sure that we load the article if it's not already in our articles DB. So I'm going to use the loading property so that we could add a ternary here and just add a div that says loading. But before that gets used, let's add a use effect hook that runs every time slug changes. And when the slug changes, we're going to call load article providing the slug. Now the slug could be undefined, so let's make sure that this only runs when the slug exists. And then for added performance, let's only do that when the article in the DB doesn't already exist for that slug. So that should be everything for our editor page. Now we're going to have to update our editor form so that we could appropriately use tag list as an array. So going back to our editor form, we're going to have to update a couple things. The first minor thing is that I realized this property should not be type, it should actually be as. Not a huge deal. But the big thing that we need to do is for the tag list, instead of field, this is going to be a field array. And class name and placeholder are now invalid because this doesn't actually represent a input field anymore. So we're going to get rid of this. And instead, we're going to have a render prop. For now, I'm just going to add a little placeholder of returning an empty fragment. This render prop is going to want a component that's a little more complicated, so I'm going to actually make a new component for that. And I'm going to call it editor form tags.tsx and open that up. Right, after you add the boilerplate, the props that's given to editor form tags is actually going to be from Formic. It's the field array render props. And if you hover over, you'll see that it's going to have a bunch of array helpers, which you can look at the documentation for. But it's also going to have the Formic props, and that's where we're going to have our form object that we send in. So instead of just using field array render props, I'm going to be more explicit and switch this to array helpers. So the props is going to be array helpers, which we could see a little later. But our form is going to have the props of article DTO. And this is just so we have a little bit more control over how this renders. And we're going to make use of it now. I'm going to do form here and values. And the only values that we want right now is going to be the tag list. And this is not going to be a one-liner. We're actually going to open this up. But we're going to make use of the tag list here. And for now, we're just going to render all of the tags in the tag list. Only if it exists and if it has a length greater than 0. And this is enough so that we could go back to our editor form and add it to our render props here. Editor form tags. And if we save, that should be good enough so that we could look at our browser. So I think we destructured too deeply. So instead, I'm just going to destructure values here. And all of these tag lists, we're going to have to add values in front of them. because values itself is possibly undefined. So we need to make sure that that exists first. And that should do it. Yep. And there are our tags. We have flowers, test, and butt. And now we could style it. So this outer fragment is actually going to be a div. I'm going to do class name of tag list, I think. And this span is going to have the class name of tag default, tag pill. And there are our tags. Let's also add a key prop so that React doesn't get mad at us. And I'm just going to send it the tag. So there's a start. Now we also need to make sure that these are, we can actually add tags to this and all the other stuff. So let's do that. All right, now let's add some array helpers. So the two that I want is going to be insert and remove. Let's first do remove since that's going to be a lot easier. So we're going to create a span, which is going to be just the X symbol. And we're going to do remove. It takes an index. So we're going to want to grab that from the second argument and set it in like so. Now for the styling of the X, it's going to have the class name of ion close round. And then I'm going to put the T right here because we will actually want to render that space in between, just so it looks a little better. So now if we press the X, it removes it from the tag list. Oh, and that's why I wanted the fragments. And that's because we're going to add a field here, which is going to have the properties that we originally removed from the field before, which are class name of form control and a placeholder of enter tags. And the event handler that we're going to want to use is onKey, which is an event handler that we have access to because it's part of the input HTML tag. Whenever the user press enter or space, that's when we're going to add a new tag to the list. And I'm actually going to use push instead of insert. That's because push just adds the new tag into the end of the list, whereas insert takes an index, so we could actually change the order if we wanted to. But I don't really care about changing the order or preserving order, so push is fine. I'm going to make one quick change so that things are going to be a lot easier for us. So I'm going to have the name of this field to be tag, and we're going to edit the editor here. And in the initial values, I'm going to have a tag property that we're going to set to an empty string. This is going to cause problems because we're going to have to update everywhere else where it's expecting the value to be the article detail. So we'll update that. And we're going to have to update the handle submit as well as the type, because now we're going to be expecting a tag string property. But once that's done, Formic will now know that a tag property exists and we can use it. And that will allow us to do values.tag here. So whenever we do a change on this field, we'll be changing that specific property. We're also going to want to get set field value from the form that comes from Formic props. So then after we pass that tag in, we can reset the field to be an empty string. And finally, I'm going to do e.prevent default here so that when we press enter, it doesn't automatically submit the form. It'll actually just allow us to create tags. And once that's done, we can go check our editor and update our little blog title. Let's do blog title or blog stuff. And then we can also check if we create more tags. So I'm going to just add hello with the space, world with the enter. Everything seems fine. And now I can publish the article. I do want to redirect the user after they submit to the actual article page. So reach router gives us a hook called use navigate, and that gives us the access to the navigate function. And we could update our handle submit to navigate based on the slug. So I'm going to actually update this ternary. Now we're using an if statement, and that's so that after we update the article, we could navigate to article/slug, and this is articles with an S. But after we create an article, we don't actually have access to the slug. So instead, I'm going to navigate, and we'll just go to /current user with their username. Now we're going to need to make some updates in our app so that it'll be easier to navigate to the editor page. The first place we're going to update is the header component, and we're going to change some of these navlink props. So over here, instead of /new, this is actually going to be to /editor. And I'm actually going to change post to article. Not a huge deal, but just semantics. And while we're in here, I want to also get the current user from auth because I want to spread this out and I want to add another nav link, which will be created dynamically, and all it is a link to the current user's profile. And here we could check new article, takes us to editor, and then this will take us to our profile page. Next, we're going to need to update article actions to conditionally change to a different set of buttons, which I'm going to make a new component for called edit actions.tsx. The markup's going to look a lot like article actions, so I'm going to copy a little bit of this. I think that's everything that we actually want, so let's get rid of all the red squiggly lines. Alright, the first button's going to say edit article. The second button's going to say delete article. The delete button's going to have the span of ion trash A. We're going to change the color from primary to danger. The edit button's going to have fan class name of ion edit. Outline secondary still, so that's good. So I still want the created at, and I think everything else we can get from overmind. So I'm gonna save this like that. I'm gonna return, so then we can use overmind. And here we're gonna grab the current user, and we just need the username and image. Oh, it could be null, so I think it'd be a good idea to do the destruction here. So we have some sensible defaults, and that'll do everything except for the created at, which we want from the article. So I'm going to do interface here, props, and we just want to get the created at, which is a string, I believe. Oh yeah, we also need to destructure that, so then we can use it. And our edit actions are complete. Now we just need to add it to our article content. And I'm going to wrap this in another return, just to make things a little easier for us. I'm going to do action buttons equals to article actions like so. So then we could replace this huge block here with action buttons. Now we're also going to grab the use overmind hook here as well, so that action buttons can be conditionally this component or the other component that we just created. So we're going to add edit actions here if there's a current user and the current username is equal to the author's username that's provided to article content. And if we save, and let's check our own articles, so this one, and these are the correct ones that we're expecting. If we go to a different article, we should still get, no, that's ours, there we go. We should still get the follow and favorite. The last thing we need to do is to edit the edit actions so that it actually does stuff, because these two buttons currently don't have an on-click method, and they need to actually lead us somewhere. So I'm going to grab delete article from our actions, as well as use navigate from reach router, and I'm going to make a function that will call delete and then redirect. So the navigate's going to go to slash. Delete article is going to want a slug, which means that we're going to need to update our props so that we get the slug. String is goes here, and then let's add it to our destructuring, and then we also need to update article content and provide the slug here. And then back in edit actions, we need to give this to the button here. So on click is going to take delete and redirect, and I'm actually going to change this edit article button to a link that takes us to editor/slug. And that will complete our video for today. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully in the last video where we finish out comments.